A young couple starts receiving unexpected visits from a man who claims he knew the husband back in high school. But as the story unfolds, he begins leaving mysterious gifts that lead to the revelation of a terrifying secret buried for over 20 years. The protagonist, Simon, recently got a new job. Because of this, he moved with his wife Robyn from bustling Chicago to sunny California to start a brand new life. Since Simon's hometown is in California, the couple bought a luxurious villa here, planning to settle down long term. One day, while Simon and Robyn were shopping for furniture for their new home at a mall, a strange man approached them and struck up a conversation. The man introduced himself as Gordo, claiming to be Simon's high school classmate. Gordo enthusiastically wanted to catch up, but Simon responded briefly and quickly dragged his wife away to pay and leave. The next morning, Simon went to his new job, leaving only Robyn and their pet dog at home. Robyn is a freelance designer who usually works from home. A while back, she suffered a miscarriage due to excessive work stress during her pregnancy. So, for the past 6 months, Robyn had turned down most of her work to focus on exercising and recovering her body, actively preparing to get pregnant again. After Simon left, Robyn went out for her usual morning run and then came back to shower. While she was in the shower, she suddenly heard the doorbell ring. Thinking it was the movers delivering the furniture they had bought the day before, she quickly dried herself off and opened the door, only to find no one outside. However, there was a bottle of red wine on the ground and a card signed by Gordo. As it turns out, Gordo had asked the store staff for the delivery address Simon had left behind and deliberately followed the address to drop off the wine as a housewarming gift for Simon and Robyn. The next evening, Gordo showed up again, this time bringing a list of recommended local gardeners and housekeepers. Since Robyn was home alone, she politely invited him in for tea and a chat. Gordo acted overly familiar, and even by dinner time showed no signs of leaving. Robyn had no choice but to call Simon, who was working late, and asked him to come home earlier, also inviting Gordo to stay for dinner with them. At the dinner table, Gordo excitedly recalled many things from their high school days. According to his memories, Simon was the soul of the class, deeply liked by both teachers and classmates. Whatever Simon said was always met with approval and admiration. Gordo remembered thinking back then that Simon was destined for great things. After showering Simon with praise, Gordo suddenly changed the subject and said he was very envious that Simon had married such an outstanding wife like Robyn and could live in such a luxurious villa. However, instead of being flattered, Simon grew visibly impatient and began making several offensive remarks toward Gordo. As a result, the dinner ended awkwardly and hastily. After Gordo left, Simon repeatedly reminded Robyn not to get too close to him in the future, saying he felt uncomfortable around Gordo and that their personalities simply didn't mesh. Robyn nodded in agreement on the surface, but inwardly, she didn't take his words seriously. 2 nights later, Simon took Robyn to a welcome dinner, organized by his new company in his honor. When they returned home, they found a beautifully wrapped gift and a card at their door. The gift was a box of fish food, and the card read, "Thank you for the dinner." It was, of course, another gesture from Gordo. In addition, Gordo had also bought a few small fish and released them into the pond in front of Simon's house. It turned out that during a casual chat 2 days earlier, Robyn had mentioned to Gordo that she planned to raise some small fish in the pond by the entrance. To her surprise, Gordo not only remembered, but also took action, buying both the fish and the food. This made Robyn feel even more that Simon's old classmate was thoughtful and genuinely kind. Simon, on the other hand, thought Gordo's attentiveness was suspicious, claiming that no one offers favors without a hidden motive. He told Robyn that back in high school, Gordo had a strange and antisocial personality, so much so that classmates nicknamed him Gordo the Weirdo. After hearing this, Robyn once again looked unconvinced. The next morning, after her usual run and shower, Robyn was just about to start working from home when the doorbell rang again. The visitor, once more, was the uninvited Gordo. He claimed he was just passing by and thought he'd drop in to say hello. Robyn ignored her husband's warnings and warmly invited Gordo inside for tea. After entering, Gordo noticed that the new television Robyn had purchased hadn't been installed yet. Without hesitation, he offered to help and successfully set it up for her. He even cleaned up all the packaging waste and took it to the kitchen garbage can. But when he walked into the kitchen, he suddenly froze in front of the refrigerator. Then, without saying a word, he turned and left the house. Confused, Robyn rushed into the kitchen to check, and to her shock, she saw something written on the magnetic memo board attached to the fridge. At some unknown time, Simon had scribbled the words, "Weirdo Gordo." When Simon returned from work that evening, Robyn told him everything that had happened and suggested she call Gordo to apologize. But Simon refused, insisting that it was actually for the best if Gordo was offended and decided to stay away for good. To Simon's surprise, however, Gordo didn't seem to take the insult to heart. A few days later, he called Robyn and invited both her and Simon over to his house. Robyn happily accepted the invitation. Though Simon was very reluctant, he eventually gave in and accompanied her on the visit. Once again, Simon was shocked. Gordo actually lived in a magnificent grand mansion. In Simon's memory, Gordo came from an average family in high school and should never have been able to afford such a luxurious home. Curious, Simon casually asked Gordo what kind of job he had that allowed him to live in such a luxurious home. Gordo clearly didn't want to answer and dodged the question, changing the subject instead. Just as the atmosphere was becoming awkward, Gordo's phone suddenly rang. He quickly excused himself, saying it was a call from his company, and stepped outside to take it. Seizing the opportunity, Simon resumed mocking Gordo in front of Robyn. He speculated that Gordo must be infatuated with Robyn's looks and was using any excuse to get close to her. Robyn was baffled by her husband's assumptions, but Simon kept pressing on. When Gordo returned from his call, Simon grew more aggressive and began pressing him again about his job. Under pressure, Gordo finally looked embarrassed and admitted that he was just an ordinary company employee. The house actually belonged to his ex-wife, and it was she who had called earlier. Gordo explained that he hadn't answered Simon's question before because he was ashamed of his failed marriage and unremarkable career. Noticing that Gordo kept looking at Robyn while talking and that his stories were inconsistent, making it hard to tell what was true and what wasn't, Simon, already irritable, finally lost his patience completely. He bluntly told Gordo that he didn't want to associate with someone who couldn't be honest and warned him not to come to their home again. With that, he dragged Robyn out and drove off in anger. However, Simon's warning didn't bring peace. In fact, it only made things spiral further out of control. The next morning after her jog, Robyn discovered that the small fish in their front yard pond were all dead, and their pet dog was missing. Feeling something was wrong, she immediately called Simon to tell him what happened. Simon rushed home after hanging up and quickly concluded that the bizarre Gordo must be behind it all. Furious, Simon drove straight to Gordo's supposed mansion to confront him, only to be met at the door by a couple he'd never seen before. Simon asked them about Gordo and was shocked to learn that this couple were the true owners of the house. Gordo was merely their former chauffeur. He had quit over a month ago. Apparently, during his time as their driver, Gordo had secretly made a copy of the house key. The night before, while the owners were away, he broke in and played host to Simon and Robyn, pretending the mansion was his. Because nothing in the house had been stolen, the owners decided not to report the incident to the police, preferring to avoid unnecessary trouble. But Simon was unwilling to let the matter go. After saying goodbye to the couple, he immediately called the police. Unfortunately, the police couldn't locate Gordo, and there was no evidence connecting him to the missing dog or the dead fish. As a result, they couldn't file a case based on Simon's report. Thankfully, the next morning, their pet dog returned home safe and sound. In the days that followed, Gordo completely vanished. Life gradually returned to normal for Simon and Robyn. But a few days later, Robyn received a handwritten letter signed by Gordo. In the letter, Gordo explained that his own home was too shabby, and he had felt ashamed to invite Simon and Robyn over. That's why he had borrowed someone else's mansion to host them. After explaining himself, Gordo sincerely apologized to both Simon and Robyn and promised to respect Simon's wishes by never bothering them again. However, what puzzled Robyn was a strange sentence at the end of the letter. Gordo wrote that many years had passed and that he had already forgiven Simon. He told him not to worry, assuring him that he wouldn't hold a grudge. From the tone of the letter, it sounded like Simon had done something in the past to hurt Gordo. But when Robyn asked Simon if there had ever been any conflict between them, he insisted there was none. As far as Simon was concerned, Gordo had always been a weirdo with a twisted mind, and who knew what that final sentence even meant? Still, Simon's explanation did little to ease Robyn's growing unease. Ever since receiving Gordo's apology letter, Robyn felt like her life had been shrouded in an invisible fear. While showering, she constantly had the sense that someone was secretly watching her from outside the bathroom. During her morning jogs, she often felt as if someone was following her. Even worse, on several occasions, while tidying up the house, she suddenly fainted, only to wake up later and find herself lying in bed, unsure how she got there. As these eerie incidents accumulated, Robyn became more convinced that there was unresolved history between Simon and Gordo, and that all the strange things happening to her were Gordo's way of taking revenge on Simon. She questioned her husband several times, demanding to know if he had wronged Gordo in the past, but Simon insisted there was no conflict between them. He believed that after Gordo sent the apology letter, he had not shown up again, and Robyn's recent experiences were just paranoia and hallucinations. Amid this atmosphere of unease, Robyn received some good news. She was pregnant again. Simon, who had long dreamed of becoming a father, was overjoyed. Strangely enough, ever since the pregnancy began, Robyn's feelings of paranoia disappeared completely. Time flew by, and her pregnancy reached 7 months. During this period, Robyn slowly stopped thinking about Gordo. However, one day while shopping for maternity clothes with a female neighbor, Robyn spotted Gordo following her again. This time, she was absolutely sure it wasn't a hallucination, because the neighbor also saw Gordo. When she got home, Robyn chose not to argue with Simon again and didn't mention the incident on the street. Sometime later, Simon's younger sister came to visit. Robyn used the opportunity to ask about Simon and Gordo's past. The sister had a vague memory of Gordo and shared that when he was in high school, he was nearly assaulted by an older student. It was Simon who stepped in and saved him. This revelation only made Robyn more confused. If Simon had once helped Gordo, why would Gordo be harassing them now? And why did the letter end with the line, "Simon, I've already forgiven you," a sentence that clearly suggested Simon had once hurt him? To uncover the truth, Robyn followed up on a lead from Simon's sister and contacted an old classmate named Greg, who revealed a shocking secret. Back in high school, Simon had been highly skilled at maintaining a perfect image. In front of teachers and most classmates, he played the part of the model student. But privately, he was an arrogant bully who regularly targeted quiet, well-behaved students like Gordo. The most outrageous incident occurred when Simon spread a false rumor across the school, claiming that Gordo had been nearly assaulted by a senior student from another school, and that Simon, had stepped in to save him. Since Simon was widely trusted and admired, everyone believed the story. Simon was hailed as a hero, while Gordo, baffled and humiliated, became the subject of ridicule and bullying. Gordo's hot-tempered father felt that his son had brought shame on the family and often beat him. One time, he even came close to setting Gordo on fire. These traumatic experiences deeply scarred Gordo's psyche. As an adult, he became socially withdrawn, never managed a stable career, and remained unmarried. After learning the truth, Robyn was furious. She demanded that Simon apologize to Gordo in person. Simon agreed, at least on the surface. But when he found Gordo, instead of apologizing, he beat him up and warned him to stay away from his life. He even threatened that if he saw him once more, he would beat him again. After the assault, Simon returned home and lied to Robyn, saying he had sincerely apologized to Gordo and that they had reconciled. He reassured her that Gordo wouldn't cause them any more trouble. Robyn believed him, and their lives returned to a calm state once again. Soon after, Simon received a promotion and a pay raise, becoming the department head at his new company. To celebrate, he invited his colleagues over for a house party. As everyone was chatting and enjoying themselves, a window at Simon's house was suddenly shattered from the outside. Simon immediately assumed it was Gordo again and urged his guests to help him chase the culprit. But to everyone's surprise, it wasn't Gordo. It was a recently fired male colleague from the company. Right there in front of everyone, the man accused Simon of fabricating lies that led to his dismissal. In order to secure the promotion, Simon resorted to his old tricks, spreading false rumors within the company and falsely accusing the other man of betraying company interests. As a result, the colleague was fired. Angry and humiliated, the man smashed Simon's window as an act of protest and revenge. When Robyn learned the truth, she was deeply disappointed in her husband. The shock triggered early contractions, putting her at risk of premature labor. Fortunately, she was rushed to the hospital in time and safely gave birth to their child. Just as Simon was reveling in the joy of becoming a father, he received a phone call from his company. After an internal investigation, upper management confirmed that Simon had indeed fabricated lies and slandered his colleague. His behavior was found to be in direct conflict with the company's values, so they decided to terminate him immediately. Still bedridden after her traumatic delivery, Robyn told Simon that she wanted to return to her parents' house for a while after being discharged, so they could both have some time to cool off. With both his career and marriage on the verge of collapse, Simon returned home from the hospital, devastated. As he prepared to pack a few things Robyn would need during her stay at her parents', he found a brand new baby cradle placed at their doorstep. Inside the cradle were 3 final gifts from Gordo. First, a copy of Simon's house key revealing that Gordo had been able to enter their home freely at any time over the past few months. Second, a disc containing an audio recording, Simon mocking and insulting Gordo in front of Robyn. This served as proof that Simon had never felt the slightest remorse for his past behavior. And third, the most disturbing of all, another disc containing a video clip. In the footage, Robyn is seen unconscious at home. Gordo, wearing a mask, lifts her into his arms and places her on the bed. The clip ends abruptly at that point without showing what happened next, leaving everything up to Simon's imagination. This was Gordo's ultimate revenge. Simon, being arrogant, controlling, and extremely paranoid by nature, instantly began to doubt whether the newborn child was truly his. Even if a DNA test in the future were to prove that the baby was indeed biologically his, as long as Simon remained in the marriage, he would never be able to shake the suspicion that haunted his mind. Did Gordo assault his wife, or didn't he? And that's exactly what made Gordo's revenge so perfect. True vengeance isn't always about killing your enemy. It's about planting a seed of doubt so deeply in their heart that they're condemned to live the rest of their life in fear, suspicion, and mental torment. The Gift is a 2015 psychological thriller and an impressive directorial debut by Joel Edgerton, who also wrote and produced the film. With its slow burn tension and a sharp storytelling, it echoes the eerie vibes of Gone Girl and Side Effects, proving that the past can come back wrapped in the most unexpected ways.